Hello. Today we have a very special guest with us at Azim Premji University. He is a retired bureaucrat, but a special one while in the bureaucracy and even after retirement. In his more than 3 decades of service, he has also spent a lot of time at the academy. What we know as the academy is the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration. It is where young officers who are just about to get into the bureaucracy get molded. So he spent almost a decade there, and rightly so. His latest book is on this great man on whom the academy is named, Sri Lal Bahadur Shastri. The book is called The Great Conciliator, Lal Bahadur Shastri and the Transformation of India. He has also held the Herbert H. Humphrey Fellowship at Cornell. He is the Robert S. McNamara Fellowship at World Bank. He has held positions at the Royal Asiatic Society, London, and many more. Today, I'm pleased to have him with me, Dr. Sanjeev Chopra.
Thank you, Rishi. What a pleasure to be here.
Of course, it's not going to be your latest book, which I'm sure you are very keen to talk about, but it is going to be a book that you wrote a couple of years ago.
But you know, this book keeps getting updated because every now and then something happens. So this book is always in the making.
Okay.
It's always in the making. As I ended my prologue, it's always in the making because after this book was printed, you know, the merger of Dadra, Daman, Nagar Haveli, that happened. So a new UT came up, you know, the merger of two UTs.
Right.
So a lot of things, little small things keep happening.
Wonderful.
We just had that agreement with the Eastern Nagaland hill tracts, you know. Right. So a new article, a new, not article, but a new arrangement has been built to ensure that they feel comfortable. You know, so the political economy and the political geography of this country will keep changing. And that's the beauty of this book, you know. So not just states, but also the way union territories are constructed, and so many things. So it's a work in progress, always.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I think then it makes sense for us to actually be talking about this book.
Oh, yes.
At any point of time. You, of course, in your prologue have mentioned that the idea for the book came, I think, around the COVID pandemic-induced lockdown.
Yes. That is when it got, when I had the time and the luxury of being able to devote to it, you know, to devote time to it. The actual idea came when we had gone to the Survey of India. You know, what happens is that every year the IS probationer officer trainees, they go to the Survey of India to understand the survey and the mapping techniques. So while the officers were doing their class, so the Surveyor General, Girish Kumar, he said, let's have a cup of coffee, went to his office, and then he started showing me the maps of India. And he showed me the first map of India, which was 1796, when the Survey of India was called the Survey of Bengal. You know, so what used to happen was that behind the Governor General's desk, I mean, there used to be a map of India. And at that time, only very little of India was with the East India Company. So they only had the areas after the Battle of Plassey with them.
Okay.
But as every 5 years, every 10 years, they would get a new position. Secunderabad would become a part of the empire. They would capture Allahabad. They would capture. So every 5 years or 10 years, the map behind the Governor General was changing.
I see.
And so all those maps were there. So so you had a map and a map and a map and a map and so many maps. In fact, so I said, okay, these are too many maps. Let's see the map of India in 1947. And that map of India in 1947 was so different from the map that we have today. And I just realized that there is not one state in the country, not one UT in the country, not one political formation in the country which has the same area, the same size, the same name, or the same spelling as was in 1940s. Not one.
Yes.
Not one. So Punjab in 1947 is different from the Punjab of today. There was no Haryana, there was no Himachal Pradesh. I mean, there was no Karnataka at that time. I mean, it was the state of Mysuru, right? So, I mean, every part of this country, I mean, the geography has not changed, but the way we have looked at the geography of each region has changed. So that set me thinking on. So I said, look, let's not go into the past. Let's start with 1947. So show me all the maps of India after 1940. And whenever there's any change, for instance, when the name of Odisha changes from Odisha to Odisha, there's a new map. And actually the map is the only authentic document. The map of the Survey of India is the only authentic document, right? In fact, I've said that it's only the map, the flag, the currency, which is the sovereign state of the thing. So that set me thinking. So I looked at so many maps, but I then figured out 12 iconic maps. The maps which really reflect change. So for example, 47 to 50. From the Dominion of India to the Republic of Bharat. Now that's a very iconic change in the map, as I've shown in the maps. I mean, I wish we had that thing where we could have displayed the maps.
But I think it's also a reminder to anyone listening to us that they need to pick up the book and look at the maps.
Look at the maps. Yeah, good. That's a good marketing angle to it. Okay. So then you see, I looked at the map 1947 to 1950. Then in 1952, the first Hindi map of the country was produced.
Right.
And in that Hindi map of the country, for the first time, China makes its mark on India's map.
I see.
Because you see, you have to credit the British Empire for its geopolitical sense.
Right.
They never used the word China on the neighborhood map of India. They always used the word Tibet. So that came as a bit of a shocker to me that that we incorporated the word China. Earlier it was called territory undefined.
Right.
And then interestingly, after a few years, Tibet disappeared from the map of India. So Tibet disappearing from the political imagination of India. So a map is not just a statement about yourself, it's also a statement about how you look at your neighboring areas. So then the 52 map was very important. Then of course in 53, the Andhra state was made.
Right.
I mean, Andhra State version 1 was made. 55, you had this States Reorganisation Commission. Then, Bombay was created. Bombay and Gujarat are made. Then, 61, Portugal is moved out of Goa. I mean, we threw them out of Goa. So this is how I then started. So what I did was that I got all these maps from the Survey of India, made big blowouts of them and put them in the library and also at my residence.
Oh, wonderful.
So, I was living, eating, dreaming, scheming, everything about maps, everything about maps. So it took me about 10, 12 months, maybe 20 months. In fact, I would recall from the February of 1920 till the publication of this book in I'd submitted the manuscript by the beginning of 22. So this was the period when I was living, dreaming maps, and looking at how, what has been the differences, what differences have come between, say, 47 and 50. So this is a very linear understanding of India's history. So of course, there can be no such thing as linear history, because whenever you talk about history, the past will always come in, and the past and the present are so closely, linked. So that's how this book came about.
Wonderful. I've still not mentioned the name of the book. We the People of the States of Bharat, and the Making and Remaking of India's Internal Boundaries.
Yes.
What's amazing is that it covers the time span, as you mentioned, from 1947 to the 2 decades of the current century, 21st century.
Yeah, till 2019.
Yeah.
It's in the 2019.
Almost 2 decades of the century. And as you said, it continues to be in the making with new editions coming every couple of years, I would think, the way we've gone about changing.
And in fact, now after this current delimitation, census and delimitation, there is a strong demand for a second states reorganization. You have a bill by Shashi Tharoor in the parliament, which is asking for a second states reorganization commission. And there is a very strong demand from several areas in the country. They want to reorganize themselves. And it is also becoming very clear that, the earlier notion of, states and center is getting slightly dissolved, because almost all development interventions are now coordination, collaboration between the state and the center. So in a way, you can't have this watertight division, between the state list and the concurrent list and the central list, because whether it is health or education or law and order or anything, I mean, all these things sort of coalesce into each other.
Right. Yeah. What I thought was brilliant is how all this that you're now talking of and this time span, you've been able to really put it all together into a very crisp 250-page at best. Of course, what I really found interesting is also almost 60 pages of notes, nuggets there, brilliant, nuggets there, and 30 odd pages of bibliography. I mean, if one really wants to dive in, we can just keep going.
A book of this sort requires these references because otherwise the lawyers will sue you. So it's taken me about 6 months to resolve all the queries which the legal team of HarperCollins had. Because you see, a fiction book, you can write anything.
Right.
But a book of contemporary history, because it's also very contested. So there are people who can take offense.
Right.
So you have to be able to give a reference on why you are saying what you are saying.
Right.
So I think that's. So I enjoyed writing this book. Let's put it like this.
Wonderful. And there are 17 chapters other than the introductory one, which is also something that I think gives you a very quick overview of what really is in there. Which would you pick of those 17 as the one that was most fascinating in terms of what came out during your research?
Well, Rishi, it's a very tough. It's like picking up who's the best student in class. You trained your. But I would say that from the point of view of understanding history, I would think that that Sikkim, the chapter on Sikkim, would be fascinating because the chapter on Sikkim also gives us an idea on how history is written. You see, because for all the other chapters, for instance, Karnataka, you have hundreds of books. You have hundreds of books on Bombay, on Gujarat, on Punjab partition, Punjab this, Punjab that. But what I wanted to show was that how history is written. And that gets very clear in the Sikkim chapter. You see, because what happens is that Sikkim, first things are that, a lot of people think that Sikkim was annexed, Sikkim was merged, Sikkim was detached. So the historical background to this is that, Sikkim was actually a Lepcha territory.
Right.
It was taken over by the Bhutias. And because both of them were following the Dalai Lama's, monastic system of religion and prayer, so the population was not growing. And so around 1870s, they invited the Nepali workers to come and work in the monasteries around there, to cultivate lands around the monasteries. Now, from 1870 to 1947, the population of Nepalese grew. The population of Bhutias and Lepchas remained the same or even came down.
Okay.
So that in 1947, the majority population in Sikkim was actually Nepali. And the Nepali Congress, the Nepali Sikkim Congress, wanted to merge with India because they felt that India is more democratic, there is adult suffrage, and they'll be better off in India. And India was certainly, better off than Sikkim at that time, especially because they were looking at the Darjeeling district, which was the nearest reference point for them.
Right.
Now, what had happened was that Chogyal had kept 60 seats in his assembly, and he said 20 for Nepalese, 20 for Bhutias, 20 for Lepchas. But in effect, what he was doing was that he was disenfranchising the Nepalese because the Nepalese had 65% of the population, but only 1/3 of the seat share.
Right.
So one of the things which Sikkim became a part of India because the citizens of Sikkim were feeling disenfranchised in Sikkim and wanted to be a part of India. So that is the underlying story, which again goes on to show that demography is destiny.
Right.
Demography is destiny, and that is why the concerns which people have are very genuine concerns. Because demography and democracy is actually destiny, because when you combine demography and democracy, that's the destiny of a nation.
Right.
Now, what happens is that, in 1974, when this actually merger takes place, the first book on the subject is written by Sunanda K. Datta Ray, Smash and Grab. Now, Sunanda K. Datta Ray, I hold him in very high esteem. He was a very senior journalist, and so he wrote, Smash and Grab, that Indian army came and they smashed and they grabbed and this and that and that. So that became the dominant narrative, and that was the dominant narrative which the West liked.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to show that, here's a little poor Himalayan kingdom, बेचारे गरीब लोग थे, उनको Indian army ने पीट पाट के अपने साथ मिला लिया. That was their narrative. Now, to counter this narrative, B.S. Das, who was the administrator at that time, he wrote a book called Sikkim, an administrator's saga, So he wrote
Right.
the saga of Sikkim, an administrator's version, in which he brought out all these things that, look, you cannot merge a territory unless the people want to be merged. So it became a part of India because the majority population wanted to be in India.
Right.
And this narrative never became so popular. Because in the first place, Sunanda K. Dattare was writing for the Far Eastern Economic Review, had been the editor of Statesman. So that narrative became more important. So one is fact, the other is the narrative, and third is who's saying that narrative.
Right.
So Sunanda K. Datta's, everybody who you go to a bookshop, anyway, you want to pick up a book on Sikkim, pick up this book, right? Whereas this Administrator Das's book hardly made it did not get that sort of traction which it ought to have got, Then there was this person, Andrew Duff, who wrote Requiem for a Lost Kingdom. Right?
Yeah.
Now, Andrew Duff's grandfather had been in Sikkim, and two of his aunts were missionaries.
Right.
In the Chogyals thing, right?
Yeah.
So they wrote that book from that perspective, right? So, but that balanced the thing. So Andrew and I interviewed Andrew Duff at the Calcutta Literature Festival. He's written a good book. So that brings in the third dimension of this book.
Right.
Then you see, we have a book by Sidhu, who was the head of RAW in Sikkim at that point of time. So he brings out the role of the Chogyal, the role of the Qazi, the role of the democratic movements, and all these things. So you have four narratives, four different narratives on how Sikkim became a part of. So I use this as an example to tell people, to tell young students that, look, do not follow just one narrative.
Exactly.
There will be multiple narratives on any subject. On anything will have multiple narratives. So you have two versions on anything, three versions on anything. A good student of history, a good document on history must incorporate all narratives. And now, after this book was published, there's another book which places annexation of Sikkim in the India-China contest, in the India-China contest of borders. So this is just one example of Sikkim, because a very small state, and you needed two constitutional amendments to get this in, first as an associate state and then as a full state, because Article 1 has the schedules attached to it. You cannot hand over an inch of Indian territory, but you also cannot incorporate an inch of Indian territory.
Right.
So this shows the significance of Article 1 and the schedules attached to it, and the interesting coincidences or the interesting narratives about Sikkim, because this can be multiplied many times over. When you have to write the history of Karnataka, for example, how do you look at it? You look at it from the perspective of Mysuru. You look at it from the perspective of Devraj Ors. You look at it from the perspective of the first of Hanumantaya. You look at it from the perspective of Nijlingappa. So there are many perspectives on it, right? So Nijlingappa goes on to say that, I could have called this Karnataka right on day one, but I did not want to hurt the people of Mysuru because, I didn't want to do that. And Devraj Ors, who is actually from the Mysuru royal family, so he uses this as a populist measure to call it Karnataka. So many narratives are there, right? So this is one of the most interesting stories of this thing. Another interesting story is about, Tin Bigha. Tin Bigha is a little corridor in Cooch Behar district, and I am personally connected with this story because I was the additional district magistrate when we had to hand over this literally Tin Bighas
to Bangladesh.
So because and interesting, what happened was that when these Rajas of Cooch Behar and the Rajas of the other side, Rangpur and Dinajpur, when they used to play chess or cards in the evening, when they would run out of their money, they would hand over the revenue of a few villages. Theek hai, chalo Rishi, I lose, so I give you the revenue of, say, Sabarmati Hostel, or I give you this, or I give you that. And they would keep exchanging these things.
It's been happening since the time of Mahabharata, right?
Since the times of Mahabharata, right? So, at that point of time, rather than the Ratcliffe and all these made a big mistake, only the revenue had been assigned. But in 1947, the territories got assigned. So you ended up with some enclaves of India in Bangladesh and some enclaves of Bangladesh in India.
Right.
Now, Nehru and Noon tried to agree on this. So they nearly agreed, and then some legislators, Hemchandra in Bengal, he filed a case in the High Court. He says, it is beyond the competence of the Prime Minister to hand over any inch of Indian territory to anybody else. And the High Court said, yes, you're right. The Prime Minister can't do it. It has to go up to the Parliament. Only the Parliament can do it. Anyway, after that, the 62 war happened and all these things went into limbo. Indira Gandhi thought that she'll be able to do it because she had just won a great victory. So Indira Gandhi and Mujib, they tried to do it. Again, the same thing happened. A presidential reference, Supreme Court, they can't do it. So, in any case, so then, then many negotiations down the line. Then somebody, I'm sure it was a joint secretary who would have suggested that, the provisions do not stop us from leasing land. They only stop us from transferring land. So we can lease land to Bangladesh. We can lease land from Bangladesh. So that's how the background was, that in 1992 it was decided that we will actually lease a little portion of India's territory to Bangladesh to connect two of their larger enclaves, the Hagram and Angkor. I was the ADM of Kuch Bihar at that time, so involved in making the white paper, getting things. But even though the alignment of the government of West Bengal and government of India was there, there was a constituent unit in the left front, led by the Forward Bloc, who said, no, we will not let this happen.
I see.
Actually, it was nothing, just symbolic. So, in any case, so at that time, the decision was that the corridor will be opened 10 to 5 and operated through the BSF.
I see.
Then it got more relaxed and we said, okay, let's open it sunrise to sunset. Then it became 24 hours, because when you get floodlights and things, it was done. So it was only, and finally, you see, it was leased to Bangladesh at a lease rent of rupee 1.
Okay.
And then one day the president said that out of a gesture of goodwill, we will not take rupee 1 also. So it was still a leasehold. Technically, it was a lease. So it was only in 2015 that the land border agreement with Bangladesh was approved. And that is how now the formal transfer of enclaves has taken place. So this is what I wanted to share, that, these are very small pieces of geography, but they're so connected to history, they're so connected to politics. And somewhere along the line, we forget the human rights of people who are living in these areas. What have they done to deserve it, So these are all the stories which come in, for example, the Ratcliffe line, is a major story in this, that initially it was thought that Murshidabad, where I became the district magistrate, would be going to Bangladesh. And therefore, on 14th of August, Murshidabad declared independence and the flag of Pakistan flew there.
I see.
And then 4 days later, on the 18th, it was changed. So, Murshidabad became a part of India. So, the house where I lived as the collector of Murshidabad, that's actually seen 4 flags. Wow. Because of the flag of the East India Company, because Murshidabad was one of the first earliest districts of the country. 1784, it became a district. Then after 1858, then for 4 days the flag of Pakistan and then the Indian flag.
Wow.
So, these are fascinating stories of history.
Absolutely.
And
No, I think, each one of this is material enough for a book. That's the amount of research probably that's gone into this as well. I did spend some time on the integration of the princely states. And in fact, though we have read about it here and there, and once the social media came about, one of these maps that has kind of got viral are those hundreds of princely states that we were handed down by the British. Of these 562 all being pulled together to sign the accession instrument. One story that probably is not as well known is, I think, late Shri V.P. Menon's efforts. Would you like to throw some light?
V.P. Menon, fortunately now, because his grandniece has also written a book, A Man for All Seasons. So a lot of that has come out now. And he himself has recorded, the integration of Indian states. So all that is there now. So I think both Mr. Menon and Sardar Patel, I would say, because, all said and done, bureaucrats will get credit, but it was the political vision of Sardar Patel which was able to get this on. And that's why in Dole Sen Gupta's book, The Man Who Saved India is a very important resource. So both Menon and Patel were very, very clear. In fact, one of the great things which is there is, that why was India named India and not Hindustan?
Not Hindustan.
You see, Britishers wanted that after partition, it should be called the Dominion of Hindustan and the Dominion of Pakistan, because that would have meant the disappearance of India. Because India as an entity would have ceased.
British India.
British India would
no
have
more
ceased.
India.
No more India. And therefore, Pakistan hai or Hindustan hai. Now this, India realized there's a difference between a breakup and a breakaway part. You see, so had it been Hindustan and Pakistan, then it would have been the breakup of India. Now what has happened is that Pakistan is a breakaway part of India. Now, this is why language has to be studied, because each point, how you construct a sentence, how you construct a thing becomes very important. So that is why India was chosen over Bharat, over Hindustan, over many other things, So that is why we said that now, of course, many years have passed, and therefore Bharat, India, Hindustan, they all interchanged, interlinked. And the best thing about this is, the three oil companies that you have. You have the Indian Oil Company, you have the Bharat Petroleum, and you have the HPC. It's phenomenal. When you look at it, I'm often so happy, delighted with the national anthem. Delighted with the national anthem. You see, celebrating Punjab, Sindh, Gujarat, Maratha, Dravid, Utkal, Banga, which means that there's no contradiction between being a good Punjabi and being a good Indian. No contradiction between being a good Tamil and being a good Indian. And you could be, so there's this ability to have multiple identities. This ability to celebrate that multiplicity of identities, the great geographies that we have, that is, I think, the strength of India.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, in the popular imagination, Sardar Patel's efforts towards ensuring that all these 562 princely states, come on board is something which is well known. I think what happens in the back rooms, what the bureaucrats do, and that is really not there.
Yes, that
of course,
is true.
books, for those who invest time and effort in reading, give some of these insights.
But let me tell you, Rishi, a point I want to say is, I have been a bureaucrat for 36 years. And I've worked with almost all governments, CPM, TMC, BJP, Congress. You see, the way we think in bureaucracy, it's very structured. We give a point of view, this. Now, it happens, the thing gets to a point only when the political executive says, go ahead and do it. You see, and that is why the credit has to go to the political executive. 80% of the credit must go to the political executive, because frankly, a bureaucrat like a lawyer will put all the points, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? But what are the political implications of that? That is for the political leadership to understand that, look, these are the political points that need to be made, that need to be understood. In fact, even till much later, after all this reorganization was happening, there was talk of, that whether Kerala should be separate, whether we can merge some parts. But again, the then Home Minister said, no, look, it's all fine, but ultimately it is the people and their sentiment and the political leadership which must take the final call. So I think that is the thing. But it was very good that Mr. Menon got the support. And very good.
As a team, I think,
it was
both Sardar
team.
Patel and VP Menon.
Very, very great team.
What I had not really, appreciated until I read your book is, the Chamber of Princes together holding almost 2/3 of Indian territory.
No, and, there's they held,
and almost 50% of the population being represented.
48% of the area, and about 10 crores of the population.
Okay, so it's other way around.
Yeah. Okay. So, but it's a very important point, So it is. See, today we can say that what was in, but the Maharaja of Mysore, the Maharaja of Patiala, the Maharaja, they still continue to exercise a lot of influence even after 80 years. Even when there is no. It required little bit of tact. It required little bit of persuasion. It required little bit of danda. So as they say, Sam, Dand, Bhed, all of them were a little bit of, so the Privy Purses ensured that they will be getting their pensions and things, the merger agreements were happening. So, but it was very intelligent thought, and this did not happen overnight. You see, I must mention, there were two instruments to sign. There was the instrument of accession, which gave only powers over defense, communications, and finance, right, and external affairs. But then it was realized that it is not possible to have a multiplicity of administrations in the country, especially because the territories were all intertwined. Right. I mean, so you had a little bit of state here, then the enclaves and enclaves and enclaves, right? So that is when it was agreed. In fact, it was Hari Krishna Mehtab, the CM of Odisha, who said, look, there are practical problems in running the state of Odisha, because I do not have, because at that point of time when the British left us, there were British districts and then there were these principalities, and they would, cross-select each other. And so he said, look, it's not going to work. So you got to get all these, you got to get the revenue, judicial, finance and land matters also from the state governments. And that is how, we'll have to be able. So that's when the merger agreement was done.
I see.
So that was the instrument of accession. In fact, the Privy Purses came after the merger agreement.
I see.
The Privy Purses did not come at the time of accession.
Okay.
Because all the Maharajas would continue to have the independent instrument, because they're only given some parts of their sovereignty.
Right.
But it was the merger agreement by which the Maharaja
gave up.
You will not be able to get revenue. So in lieu of that, in lieu of what they were getting as their revenue and as their income, the Privy Purses were given.
Oh, okay.
So it is this aspect which has to be kept in mind. There were two agreements. There was the instrument of accession, and then there was the merger agreement, and there was the Privy Purse agreement. So the Privy Purse is linked to the merger, and it is linked to what was the revenue, what was the extant revenue of the princely state at that time.
I see. Oh, it was linked to that. Okay.
Yeah. But how do you decide? I mean, Mysuru, you see, 5 states in this country, 5 of the princely states are very large. I mean, the Mysuru, Hyderabad, Jammu Kashmir, and Gwalior, Bhopal, these were the bigger states. I mean, the 21-gun salute states.
Right.
Baroda was one of them. And then there were 19-gun salute states, Patiala and the others, the 17-gun salute states, 15. So the Britishers had a way to keep, everybody in a hierarchy.
Right.
So, the princes would spend a lot of time, a lot of effort in, with Tera Topu ki salami, maybe 15 years, so you will start here.
Yeah.
So they would spend a lot of time in, getting their status upgraded. And the British were also very clever. They would give, this rank is personal to you. Which means that when your son becomes the king,
right, we will see.
Which means that you put him on the light. Right. So, this rank is personal to you. This rank is only within your state, or this rank is all India. So the British had a way to sort of keep everybody, confused. So.
But you also use this phrase, they were hopelessly disunited and frozen in time, right?
Yes.
Which, of course, was probably why they did not bargain together. But, some kingdoms...
And they could not have bargained together because, see, by the end of the World War, the British had no... I mean, they didn't have the muscle to fight. You see, the World War II had finished the British Empire internally.
Right.
I mean, they did not have the might to do it. You see, we must understand that ultimately you require strong finances, you require a strong internal autonomy, you require all these things to be able to hold on to the British had lost the nerve to hold on.
Right.
You see, and so if they had not lost the nerve to hold on, I mean, if the Churchillian view had been there, then it could have continued for much longer, because the fact is that both the world wars actually broke imperialism.
Right. Yeah.
So, because remember that in 1901 to 19, when Curzon was the viceroy, it was the largest landmass ever.
Yeah.
I mean, from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa to Aden, now in Oman, to this Burma. See, all this was Indian territory.
Yeah.
All this was Indian territory. It was the largest. I mean, next, because Mahabharat, when we talk of the Mahabharat, it was not under one particular king or one particular Chakravarti Raja even at that time, because the Udyog Parva does mention 112 kingdoms. Yeah. In the Mahabharata, but there were different stretches. Some stretch with the coastal, some stretch here, some stretch. Even the highest extent of Mughal Empire was not able to come to the Deccan. So from Curzon's viewpoint, 1903 was the hallmark. In 1903, when they set up the New Delhi as the capital, they never thought that 20 years mein they'll lose the empire. Yeah. Why would they have wanted to shift the capital to Delhi? If they had to happen.
Exactly.
So so a lot of things come up. A lot of things are so interesting.
Yeah. Now, talking about the capital, there is also this chapter that you have with regard to the capitals and the changes that have happened with.
Yeah, I've called it capital disputes.
Capital disputes, yeah.
It was the first capital dispute with Chennai, both the Telugus and the Tamils wanting it.
Right.
Hyderabad, Telangana, and they wanting it. Chandigarh continues to be an area of dispute.
Yeah.
And at some point of time, it was felt that, let Hyderabad be the winter capital of India.
Mm-hmm.
So that, or summer, I forget, they suggested that Hyderabad is the winter capital of India. Mm-hmm. In fact, Dr. Ambedkar suggested that will be one way of, keeping the South also happy. Mm-hmm. So we've had a lot of these issues.
Just out of curiosity, did Madras state by any chance claim Bangalore? Given that British had their cantonment and close to Tamil Nadu boundary.
No, because you see, in fact, as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, the erstwhile Madras presidency, it was the Telugus who wanted out of Madras land, and that was because of an effort. You see, according to the linguistic principles which the Congress itself followed, Telugus as a group, as a language group, was fairly large, and they could have been their own state. For some reasons, especially because of the opposition by Mr. Rajagopalachari, Madras remained Madras. But when he wanted to change the course of the river and divert the waters from the Telugu-speaking areas to the Tamil-speaking areas, that is when this agitation started, took a different turn. Because remember that in those days, and even now, water disputes are very important. Right. And in those days, water was the lifeline for agriculture. Other than agriculture, there was nothing. Right. So that is when Potti Sriramalu's fast unto death took place, and he died. Yeah. Now, if he had not died, maybe history would have been different. So this is another important, interesting thing which is not highlighted. Is the fact that at some point of time, Bihar and Bengal wanted to merge.
Right, I did see
the Roy-Sena proposals. So you see, B.C. Roy had gone to Amritsar to attend the Congress session. I forget, it's 1952 or 53, but he saw that the rehabilitation of those who'd come from West Punjab had been almost perfect. Can't be perfect. There was, but the one that the people who were lawyers and professionals, they got absorbed. But the ones who had lands in West Pakistan, they were given lands in and around the area which is now Haryana, because it was still part of Punjab at that time. Right. So this resettlement was tough, but it had happened, and in 2 or 3 years' time, the crops had become okay. So people were on that track because Punjab had, number one, empty land, and number two, there was the reverse migration as well. A lot of Muslims also, some voluntarily and some forced, they also left. So there was a lot of land that was available from Delhi to Punjab. So this he saw. Whereas what happened in Bengal was that it was just one way. There was movement in, but there was no movement out. There was no pressure to move out to East Bengal, right? So what happened was that these refugees who were coming in from East Bengal, they were some were sent to Andaman Island, some were sent to Dandakaranya, some were sent to Odisha, some were sent to Pilibhit. So they were dispersed in several places. And when you disperse a population in several places, you lose, amongst other things, your political voice, your economic voice. Because those who came in from, say, let's say that a group of 10,000 people or 20,000 people have been rehabilitated in Faridabad. So they also get a political voice. Right. And in fact, today the CM of Haryana is a Punjabi. Right. So he came in, his family must have come in, settled. Now, so there was no loss of political voice. There was no loss of economic selfhood. And that identity loss was not there because Punjab, Haryana, Delhi was one contiguous area. Whereas now, imagine a group of, say, 5,000, 10,000 Bengalis lifted to and put into Pilibhit district, or put into Andaman, put into Dandakaranya, put into various. So he felt that, if I had all this land, which is now Jharkhand,
Right.
which was not very which was sparsely populated. So he felt that, why can't Bihar and Bengal merge, become one supra state,
Right.
and all the people who are coming in, all the people who had to compelled to leave their homes from East Bengal, let them come, let them be settled there. So he and Sri Krishna Sinha, and both the assemblies passed the resolution.
Oh, I see.
But it came up with a lot of opposition from 2 or 3 sources. One source was, of course, the CPM, because they had a strong hold over the refugees, and they felt that, so the sinister view is that they didn't want rehabilitation. I won't go to that extent, but for whatever reason they were opposed to it. Bihar also started getting second thoughts, because they felt that the Bengalis are more educated, they are more prosperous, so it'll again be the intermediary ruling class that will happen. A lot of people in Bengal felt that they'll become a minority in the new state that will happen.
Yeah.
But the real thing was that UP Congress did not like it, because they felt that, see, UP has always dominated India's politics. But this state would have been bigger than UP as well.
Oh.
So they felt that political power will now shift from UP to this new entity. So, in spite of the fact that, in the first round, everybody was very happy and very excited, and Mr. Nehru said it's a good idea. And this also shows that while the English press and the Economic Weekly, the precursor to Economic and Political, they all said it's a great idea, it's a great idea. But the Hindi press and the Bangla press, they were opposed to it, which also shows that the perceptions of the Indian of the elite and the perceptions of the people on the ground are always very different. So it wasn't pressed. But on record, both assemblies had passed the resolution.
Wow.
So that's what I've called the Roy-Sena proposal. But that leads us to think that if this had been accepted, then all these small state formation in this country would not have happened. Because then the concept of a state being bilingual would have been accepted, because Punjab was already bilingual, Bombay was already bilingual, Bengal would have also been bilingual. So then this whole notion of, the country being reorganized on linguistic lines and small states, that may not have happened. That would take us to another dimension of what Indian history would have been if states had been fewer and state governments had been as dominant politically as the rest of the country, as the union government or the state of UP.
Right.
Because UP has had, out of 15, 8 prime ministers have been from there. And now our current Prime Minister, he was elected from both Gujarat and UP, but he decided to retain his UP seat, because UP is the sort of nerve center of India's polity.
This is really very interesting. But then, the fact of the matter is that linguistic lines was what on which we had our states reorganized. So you do mention it in your book, Dr. Chopra, that your research material has been primarily in English, and whoever wants to look into this subject again would probably be on the right path if they are looking at Indian languages. Probably there could be more insights that they can get out of it.
Because let's take the case of Punjabi Suba or the reorganization of Mysuru. Most of my sources have been English sources, but I'm sure the Kannada press may have had a different view or would have a different nuance. As I pointed out in the Roy-Sena proposals, what the English press was saying was very different, and what the Bangla press and the Hindi press was saying was very different. And also, you see, within the newspapers, all throughout, there's been a difference of opinion.
Right.
Let's take the case of like before independence, the Statesman and the Times of India were pro-British, and you had the Amrita Bazar Patrika, the Free Press Journal, and many of these Friend of India. So many of these were Indian viewpoint. Tribune in Punjab, for example. So all these things have always Bengali, Maratha. These were the newspapers which were produced by Indians, so they gave a different viewpoint. So all this is always there. A newspaper is never as neutral as it is made out to be. Neither a TV channel. Perhaps only this podcast is absolutely neutral.
So what kind of, let's say, new insights do you think would come out if the historian who's wanting to use regional languages for a work like this, beyond what you've already been able to unearth? As I said, your biblios.
What will happen is that a lot of material which was only in the periphery, for example. For example, on the Punjabi Suba, what the RSS felt about it, I've not been able to capture it so completely.
Right.
What the Gujaratis newspapers had to capture about. You see, because what has also happened is that in this book, one of the limitations has been that the study of Haryana and the study of Himachal, it appears that because Punjabi Suba had to be made, that is why Haryana was made and that is why Himachal was made. So it's a sort of a, so one is focusing on the history of Punjab's reorganization, and in the course of Punjab's reorganization, you also get to understand it. But a new history, which will focus on Himachal, on the different aspects of Himachal Pradesh, how Himachal got integrated. So I think what is required now is a more state-specific research. Because I mean, whether it is the reorganization, I mean, Gujarat, for example, there was Saurashtra was there, and then there was Bombay and Gujarat. So we need a lot more material on that. I mean, we don't have material on, I mean, at least that material is there, but it's not been put up in an archived material or an archived form. And then another aspect is that you see, our Indian archives have not been updated with the same regularity as the in fact, I have mentioned here that the best way to study India is to look into the records of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. I mean, when I was researching on Goa, I found that we have very little information. But the British High Commissioner and his deputies in Calcutta and Madras and Bombay, they used to send a fortnightly report to their Foreign and Commonwealth Office.
Right.
So that's become a very important source material.
Yeah.
So, as we go along, newer next generation will always, and they'll have support from AI to dig up much more information than I could. And I tell you that, over the last 4 or 5 years, I find that research has become easier because a lot of things are now online. You see, all these newspapers, for instance, whether it's the Times of India or Statesman or Indian Express, earlier you had to go to the Nehru Memorial and go through the microfilm. Now, a lot of it is available online.
Right.
And all the past records are available online.
Yeah.
So I think research is going to become both easy and also more challenging because there'll be no shortage of information.
Right.
There'll be no dearth of information. What will be required is a cognitive ability to sift through this volume of research and find out what is required to get to the base of it. And I think, because now all parliament debates are online.
Right.
Almost all state assembly debates are also in the process of becoming online. Right. All translations are now available. So if a debate is taking place in the Karnataka Vidhan Sabha, so in addition to Kannada, it will also be available in English and Hindi. Right. So that will make it easier for researchers across the country to garner that information. You see, because the conversations that take place in the Vidhan Sabha are of a different order altogether.
True.
You see, because they reflect the local flavor. They reflect the local thing, right? So that will come up. See, so all this will add to our understanding of, because what was being thought, the whole debate on when the name of Karnataka is being changed to Mysuru, the land reform legislation that was happening, I mean, the way these leaders would have spoken, all this would now come up. And it will certainly, for students of political science, for political economy, of history, or philosophy, it'll be a very, very good resource material.
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, I want to ask you whether you have any plans of getting this translated?
It has been translated.
Oh, it's already
and I
been
must tell you
translated.
that the translation by Sachin Chauhan has just won the Uttarakhand Award for the best translation.
Oh, is it?
And my translator's got 1 lakh rupees. Yes, that's wonderful. And right now, the Punjabi translation is happening.
Wonderful.
And I would encourage you to get the university to do a Kannada translation.
Thank you. I think
because we need, because these are the sort of dialogues which need to be done.
Absolutely.
And while translating it into Punjabi and into Hindi, I realized that there are a lot of. I also realized the difficulties of translation. For instance, there's a statement by Nehru in which he says that let elections go to hell. Now the translator said election jaye narak mein. No, that doesn't work, right? Because elections got to do. But so, the closest in Punjabi, the closest equivalent found was that chunav is called chon in Punjabi. Chona jan chullech. Let them go to the hearth. Now, going to the hearth, I mean, let them go to hearth. I don't bother. So this is also beauty of, the thing. So I think it's going to take a long time for AI to come up to the thing, because a steel plant becomes steel ka poda in the literal translation. And it appears that steel plants are helping the environment, because after all, these are podas.
Right.
But you and I know that a steel plant is actually very harmful to the environment. So these are the interesting aspects of.
But it's really lovely to know that translation is already underway. And
now the Hindi translation is out, and now because it's got the award, now the publisher will bring out a paperback edition.
Okay.
The Shastri books paperback edition in both Hindi and English should also be coming out by the end of next month, I think. So that will make it more affordable.
Very nice, yeah. Because I think, when we were talking of the next gen historians getting into, the Indian languages to do more research, a translated, book.
And we need a lot of research on Indian states, because each Indian state is the equivalent of a European nation.
Exactly.
And we have so little information about Indian states. I mean, for instance, other than those who are actually reading political science or history, you go to Punjab and ask somebody would Hare Krishna Mehta will say, what is this? You come here and ask about Pratap Singh Kero and, you'll get a blank. B.C. Roy, you'll get a blank. But these are all people who've held such important positions, who've done such transformative moments for the country. And this whole thing that all of our history is more or less Delhi-centric, that must change. So these are some of the things which I hope the next gen will sort of.
In fact, I think you made a very interesting point with regard to the Delhi-centric narrative, right? As to how, for instance, hence even along with the Prime Minister, there are certain ministries that get the attention. And various other things that have happened in the states, and all that currently can still be dug out if one is really looking at it from a state-specific point of view.
Yes.
So it was lovely talking to you, Dr. Chopra. Before we finish, of course, I know that you've just finished the Shastri book, but then already plans for the next one?
Yes. My next book is on Major Bob Khating. Yeah. So Major Bob Khating, and I call it Tricolor at Tawang. It's on Major Bob Khating.
Wow.
A valiant Tangkhul Naga, a proud Manipuri, a practicing Baptist, and a citizen of Bharat, that is India.
Wonderful. On that note, we look forward to it, and the next conversation probably on that.
Yes, sure, certainly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rishi.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.